One of the most CO2 emitting industries in the world is actually the cement industry. Therefore today I will have a discussion with Evita, representing SCHWENK, about how to run that business in a more sustainable way and what is the future of that type of business in a world where CO2 emissions is becoming much more important. Hi Evita, great meeting you for this podcast.
Hi Anders.
Looking forward to this discussion. I think it's better to introduce yourself because you have so many different roles or hats in your professional work.
Yes, I think I am a very active person and my daily work is here in SCHWENK. I'm the management board member of SCHWENK Latvia, also environmental and legal director. But I'm also active in FISIL. I'm leading shadow economy combating group. I'm also head of supervisory council in Transparency International Latvia branch. And since very recently, I have also become a European Climate Pact ambassador. So very active life, many duties, but I think I really gain energy from the work I do and I see meaning in it.
I read it as if you have a very strong will to improve society in a better way. Where does that come from?
Yeah, I have been thinking about that and I think since childhood actually I have had this inner feeling, that I want to fight for justice, and probably that's also one of the key reasons why I became a lawyer, because I thought that this is what lawyers do, that they fight for justice.
Not only defending the bad guys in the court.
No, somehow, yeah, very interesting. So as opposed to probably many movies that create that image, I was more thinking about justice.
Does that come from because you've seen injustice in the history?
In some ways, definitely, because I grew, actually I was born still while the Soviet Union existed, but I was still a small child when Latvia regained its independence, and of course then all the crimes committed by the Soviet Union, let's say, against the Baltic states and other countries came up and were revealed finally, and of course especially I think children are very kind of have these deep feelings when reading about it and hearing about it, and I think it might be also some source of this inner kind of feeling and later conviction on why it is actually relevant to be active, to defend democracy and justice and rule of law, of course.
Democracy and defend democracy is of course a topic that is very hot and has been for the last years, I would say, in very many countries. How do you see the development in this region of the world?
Well, this is a very tough issue, and of course it is relevant probably that we still trust research and let's say how really a situation develops. And yeah, it always kind of is contradictory, because we might have like subjective feelings. Also, we see what is happening in Ukraine, for instance, or what is happening in Hungary. We are watching, of course, what is going on in US and so forth. On the other hand, for instance, very recently, approximately a week ago, I read an article about a study on LGBT rights, for instance, in the world. And of course that actually these are the best times for LGBT rights, all in all.
So it's never been as good as now.
Exactly. In the whole, if we look at these rights globally, so it is interesting that you kind of some things are becoming worse and some things are becoming better. So, but it is really important that we keep on fighting, that we never let us or ourselves think that status quo will remain. especially if we look, for instance, at the US. I think it is really horrible to watch what is going on there, and how actually this violence is rising, and how lies can be considered truth, and so forth. So it is really of utmost importance that we remain integral, that we protect what we have.
I think one thing you said, or many things you said, but one thing I was picking up really here, that is trust in research and trust in academics, because that is a reflection I made as well, that I don't know, but it seems so even there is a little bit of a divide in general in societies now, that you can say, yeah, we hear, for example, when it comes to the topic of climate, there are researchers saying this and that, but I mean, even persons that I didn't believe would say that have said, yeah, but I mean, they make a career on these things, that's why they do it, this is not the real research and so on, and that makes me really very surprised and actually upset, this distrust in really solid academical work. I mean, my perception is it wasn't like that 10 years ago.
Yes, I think social networks, of course, play a role, that actually anyone can have an opinion, and of course it is okay to have an opinion, but that all opinions are equal. I think this is an issue, that let's say an opinion, or actually not an opinion, but data of a scientist, for instance, of research, is kind of valued at the same level as just somebody, who simply has an opinion. And I think this is a problem, that we have to differentiate and not believe anything that is being said. And of course, spreading conspiracy theories, this is very easy, but unfortunately they really influence people's minds. And indeed, climate is one of the topics which is relevant, and where it is really critical that we trust science. And I think one of the key elements to be concerned about is that whatever we pay now for climate change, of course, this is not little, this is not cheap, but it is clear already now. So there are many studies already that say that whatever we don't pay now, we will pay much more actually in the future. And for us as a humankind, this cost will be not just, of course, financial anymore, and it isn't financial anymore already at this point of time, but more lives. It will cost more lives, and many other things, of course, biodiversity and so forth. So we have to act now.
I mean, this topic we have talked about for many years in general, about the importance, and it's been discussed for the last 30, 40 years. But my feeling is that it's now people start to realize what is happening. And I think that is because now you get tangible evidence. I mean, 40 degrees for weeks in Greece, people dying out of heat, tourists, and droughts in Spain, virtually no water, and conflicts because there are tourists using water and so on. And I think this it wasn't there 10 years ago, and now it's happening, and I think this is a real eye-opener that, okay, so then this is truth. So it should be a momentum now in this topic in general.
Well, but I still think that really informative, not even campaigns, but let's say information provided by the government, by businesses, by academia, by everyone really qualified to do that, it is of utmost importance that it is being done. Because again, yes, maybe people in Greece, in Spain, in Pakistan have this understanding at this point of time, but I think here it is not exactly the case,
you know,
because
the longer golf season, maybe, kind of.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So people still view, this as a very nice thing, that we have a longer summer and okay, 30 degrees, but okay, this is for maybe a few days and then it's gone, and all in all, it is okay. So I think we shouldn't actually just trust, that people will somehow understand it. We need activity around that. We need information, we need we need to somehow get to the people, that they really understand and that they also know what to do with this information, how to change their behavior, like what exactly to do and so forth. We need to play this active role. We need leadership in this.
Where one can see leadership in many topics, that of course is in politics. But you can also have a leadership going in the total other direction as well, more populism thinking. Do we have the politicians that we deserve in that perspective? Do we have the drive from the political? Because I can see that from my home country in Sweden, that we used to be very progressive in these areas. But now you have this type of powers also getting very many votes, almost kind of denying the topic and then affecting the whole politics in the country. So we come more into a situation where it's more kind of the industry now seeing a lot of business opportunities and driving the sustainability topic. What's your reflections on that topic here?
If we speak about the national politics, of course, I myself would desire a much more active role in seeing opportunities in Green Deal, for instance, and really enabling transition to green economy. And this is where we as a company, as SCHWENK Latvia, have been playing an active role. And we think that businesses actually should play a very clear active role in this transition. And demanding also from other stakeholders the same. But at the same time, I'm also very grateful to what the EU has been doing. And without the EU, I would say that at least Latvia definitely wouldn't have done as much as it has actually done so far when it comes to at least trying to reach certain climate goals. So this EU policy, of course, is extremely helpful, and that's why I feel relieved in a way about the general outcome of the European elections that took place a little bit more than a month ago, because it could have been worse. I would say the outcome could have been worse. And of course, still there are different right-wing and left-wing politicians, but still I think the general outcome would not somehow weaken significantly.
We stick to the course.
We stick to the course, exactly.
Fit for 55.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, now even, and we were discussing that with the colleagues, with colleagues as well, that even if the outcome would have been worse, that there is already this trend in businesses. It's like a little bit like a tornado already, that it can't be stopped anymore. This green transition, I think, for responsible businesses, this can't be stopped anymore. And there also is this peer pressure. We feel it also in our industry, which is cement industry, the so-called hard-to-abate industry, that there are these aspirations, these very clear goals, how to reach climate neutrality in specific time limits. And this is like a competition, like this very positive competition, who will be first, how efficient, how efficiently we can do that, how fast we can do that, this is like a race already. And I think in many industries it is like that. Of course, we have, if we look at Latvia, we have different types of companies. We still have even a very significant part of business which is still in shadow, which is a grey economy. These are grey economy players, and of course they don't care about anything about paying taxes and being compliant with anything else, including reaching climate targets. But still, let's say this big trend is there, and this is like a huge stream.
Let's do a little bit of a deep dive in the cement industry, talking about SCHWENK, where you have I guess you spend the majority of your time, or you have a lot of engagement. So probably that's where you spend 100% of your work time, and then you have a lot of other interests on the side then. As you say, a hard-to-abate industry, an industry that technically, when cement is produced, it releases a lot of CO2. And there are various ways in order how to take down that CO2 effect. So what's your ambitions in SCHWENK? Because I noticed this as well, that SCHWENK seems to be very much on the forefront as a group on this topic, but I can see that others as well, shouldn't mention the names maybe, but anyway, they're also competing with this, having the first carbon capture storage facility in the world up and running, and so on and so on. So what's your ambitions for SCHWENK here in Latvia?
Yeah, we are absolutely a company that does more than it speaks about it. In this regard, we have discussed that internally. That so there are players which, on daily basis, post something on social networks about how they proceed with that. We don't do that. But we really have been investing already for many years in actually trying to reduce our CO2 footprint as much as possible. Here in Latvia, Brocēni cement plant, the single plant in Latvia, is actually the newest in Europe and definitely one of the most modern cement plants, and one of the elements which proves that was that already when building this plant and commissioning it back in 2010, which is still kind of, it seems a long time ago, but for a cement plant this is still a baby plant. So while building it, this idea of substituting fossil fuels with alternative fuels was already built in. And currently, we use almost 100% of alternative fuels instead of fossil fuels. So as fossil fuels, we of course understand gas and coal historically. And with alternative fuels, in our case, we understand the so-called solid recovered fuel, which is fuel made of household and industrial non-hazardous waste. Then we also can use tire fluff, which is an extremely good material, shredded tires. We have been also using other types of materials, but then in smaller quantities. For instance, we used to have, from the Soviet times, a very polluted area with the so-called acid tar waste. And we have, for instance, incinerated that material as well, like completely, because it was extremely dangerous material, like really hazardous. It could really spoil groundwaters, and they could then go to the rivers and then to the sea. I mean, like really causing a catastrophe, I would say. And then we were active participants in this project. So this is kind of the something that we have been doing already for many, many years, but we have to understand that why cement industry is hard to abate industry. It is due to the fact that only 1/3 of all CO2 emissions are fuel related. And as mentioned, so we have covered almost 100% this fuel part, but approximately 2/3 of all emissions then are chemical process related or raw material determined, because CO2 is mainly bound in limestone, which is then really the key raw material for production of cement. And when burning it in these very high temperatures, over 1,500 degrees, then CO2 from limestone is released in the atmosphere. So our key efforts now are devoted to these 2/3 of emissions. For our industry, currently, the key solution is carbon capture. And then further, of course, storage or utilization. Utilization is, of course, preferred in mid and longer term when it is possible for such amounts of CO2. But we are very actively working on carbon capture solutions, and we plan to install such carbon capture equipment or technology already by 2030. So basically in 6 years.
Does the technology exist, or is it a technology risk in this 2030 target?
There are several technologies which are being tested now, and again, it is not very simple. So even though kind of cement looks very, simply as a powder,
Yeah.
it is still produced, let's say, in slightly different manners in different plants, and therefore maybe one technology is better in one plant and does not really fit for another plant.
I would expect, actually, looking on a 5 to 10 year horizon, that the price of cement and thereby also concrete should go up. And reason for that is that we have the European trading system for carbon emission rights. And as it is now, the cement industry gets those for free. But from 2026, if I understand right, it will start to reduce. On the other hand, it will be compensated by the taxes on or tariffs on imports then. But it ought to be, shouldn't that be that the reason for that protection is that prices will be higher than in Europe on cement? Or how do you see it?
I would actually want to clarify one thing. It's not that there is this free allocation for the whole industry and for whatever amount of CO2 released. Actually, even the opposite, I would say, that the free allocation is given to the most efficient plants,
Okay.
like our plant, for instance. So we are not buying CO2 emissions just because we have been investing significantly in order to actually be one of the most efficient plant in
So someone
in the
running
EU.
an less efficient plant has this cost already now for the emission rights then?
Yes, exactly. And that's also the reason why some cement plants in Europe have stopped their operations.
Okay.
And we don't even have to look very far. For instance, the plant in Estonia, it is not a full cycle plant. They don't produce clinker, which is this most emission intensive process. They only mill cement, and they bring clinker from Sweden, to the best of our knowledge. So, and this is exactly the reason why they do that, because they have not been investing. They had not been investing in reducing their CO2 footprint. So basically, all the whole cement industry, that were willing to, these entities that were willing to remain in the market, they already had been investing for quite some time in, for instance, in alternative fuels and basically to all the best available technologies at the particular time.
But very good that you clarified that one. I wasn't aware of that one. But anyway, when there will be less emission rights, and probably if you don't do anything from your current level, if you wouldn't do these big investments, you would then need to start to buy these rights just to run your existing business somewhere in the future, right? Shouldn't this mean that either it's investments or it's a cost for those emission rights? Shouldn't the price of cement then increase? Shouldn't we be prepared for that one?
Well, I would say that it is again not maybe that straightforward because, as you mentioned yourself, so if you need to purchase then these CO2 allowances for a price which is unknown at this point of time, for maybe years, ahead of us, of course there are let's say some educated guesses on what they might look like. But of course the system is built that way, that the industry has to make investments in reduction of its CO2 footprint. So that's the whole idea of, let's say, why this then even the number of allowances that you can purchase is then being reduced. But I think that, for instance, especially again, if we look at Sweden, I think that the customers in Sweden wouldn't want, for instance, our cement or any cement which is produced with buying CO2 allowances because the footprint is there. Yeah. They want cement without any CO2 footprint or as little as possible if technology is allowed at that particular point of time. And that's where this peer pressure steps in, that we have to work on these solutions, how to then reduce the CO2 footprint.
I have said in some occasions also that unless we really take down the CO2 footprint in the construction and demolition phase of buildings, I can't see that it's kind of sustainable to do the amount of constructions we're doing now. Just kind of driving around in Stockholm and see a lot of constructions is actually going on, right? But then we need to solve this problem. And one of the things as well is, you say, when it comes to demolition, I mean, concrete in itself is a big part of that waste from demolition sites. I understand that in some occasions is tested also to be used as a raw material, because then you already have taken away quite much of the CO2 from the initial kind of limestone to stone, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is also a very interesting topic because we could even maybe make one step back and we can even speak first of all, before we come to demolition, about construction itself. So for instance, for us as also producers of not just cement but also ready-mix concrete, right. Then we also face this issue, for instance, that when we bring our concrete to job sites, then, of course, there are some like leftovers or remains. Let's say there is some material left, even in these mixer trucks. And then also, let's say if we go back then to the plant, then also we need to wash these trucks, we need to wash equipment and lab and so forth. And there is, let's say, concrete which is left already at that point of time. And then that's why it is of utmost importance that we have like recycling equipment where we can separate water from, let's say, these other elements in concrete, including then sand and rubble and this, first of all, is already a material that can be reused. Water can be reused, and also these materials can be reused in production of concrete. And if we, and there is also a potential to reuse these remains immediately without, let's say, this recycling. And for instance, in our case, we use this material for production of concrete blocks, which then can be used for different construction elements, like walls of storage buildings and so forth, like huge concrete blocks. And as we have found out, they are also demanded by our customers as well. So this is one way, for instance, if we stick first of all to the production process. But we know that there are many companies that don't do that, for instance. And we think that also from the regulatory perspective, there can be improvements, that this recycling infrastructure, should be compulsory, and that actually all this wastewater and anything else that remains from this process, that it can't simply go to, for instance, sewage system of the city or something like that. So there are improvements that can be made there. Now that we go to this, to the other end of the life cycle of the building. Indeed, demolition is also a process which has been neglected for a very long time, actually for probably until now, And we have to start with even how we demolish and what we can recover. Because if we demolish, the building, the whole building, where everything is together.
Put in some dynamite and then you blow it down.
Exactly.
Like you see in some countries, yeah.
Exactly. Then, all this material is together, and it is hard, of course, to even recover this material in some organized way, because if you want to use some sort of material in production of something else, of course, again, there are standards that have to be observed. the material then also has to have certain characteristics, properties. You can't just take this rubble and or this waste actually
and put it into production
and
somewhere.
put it into production somewhere. You will immediately this equipment will break and the quality will be inappropriate and so forth. Therefore, actually, this whole demolition, I would say, stage of the building has to be reevaluated. How we demolish it, what actually is inside of that building, what can be recovered, and then demolish in a way that all this material, as much as possible, can be recovered. So this is it, actually.
Yeah. A lot of work to be done in the
A lot of
sorting of
work.
the stuff.
Yes, exactly. And this is also one of the directions in which we as a company can play a role. So we have already colleagues that work, let's say, in different committees, commissions, like regarding, for instance, construction standards. But this is also something that we need to raise, because if we want to really enable circular economy when it comes to construction, I mean the whole process, the whole life cycle, then these are issues which we have to raise.
So what's your target? I think it's interesting you mentioned water, which I think is probably the next big thing. Now everyone is talking about climate. So I understand that you're measuring water consumption. And I think that we will see quite soon, due to the climate change, we start to see a lot of effects when it comes to just access of water. And there are some researchers that really scare me, saying that in 2030 we will have some 700-800 million water refugees in the world. It's close to 1 billion people that has to be replaced due to lack of water. And we see that and luckily not where we are living, but in more southern countries, India and so on, there are real challenges when it comes to this topic. So water you are into. What's your ambition level when it comes to CO2, water and biodiversity? How would you kind of phrase it for your Latvian operation?
When it comes to climate, it is clear. So to be as close to net zero as possible. So basically try to not emit anything. But again, here we have to then differentiate between our cement business and ready-mix business. And we, of course, focus when it comes to climate to our core let's say problem issue, core challenge, which is then really clinker production, where we emit the most. That's why we put, let's say, the most effort into that.
But will it be zero in 2030?
Yeah, as mentioned, it most likely won't be exactly zero, but we are. Yeah, exactly, 0 to 10. But as mentioned, we strive to use best available technology, of course, of that time, and try to improve it as much as possible. Not us ourselves, of course. Let's say then the relevant equipment technology providers, but as mentioned, so they develop very fast. And at the end of the day, of course, the goal is to reach total zero. And actually here I would even want to go back to our general sustainability concept as we see it in the company. So it is based on mission zero, meaning that we strive to reach zero harm to people, zero harm to climate and environment, and then zero, not that we strive, we implement that, zero tolerance to any kind of violations, corruption, and so forth. So, and under these 3 pillars, then we implement, let's say, all activities which we then deem necessary for reaching these Mission Zero targets. But when it comes to water, first of all, it is interesting that in cement production we don't use water. So. But it is then topical for production of aggregates and ready-mix concrete. And there we still have space for improvement when it comes to recycling water and reusage of water. When it comes to aggregates, we already do it in the amount of 90%, but when it comes to ready mix, we currently reuse approximately 1/5 of water, but we are already in the process of investing in equipment then which would ensure that we can reuse 100% of water. So we are, let's say, making step by step towards these goals. So we set goals, of course, in different areas when it comes to actually any ESG, let's say, element. And of course, water usage, climate-related issues, so they are all there. And let's say the challenge lies in the fact that we have actually very broad business areas, and we use lots of resources, lots of raw materials, and therefore, first of all, we focus on our biggest impacts. But we are making steps also in all the other areas.
I think this is what is both tricky but also fascinating with the overall sustainability topic, that it comes new really important topics in this one. I mean, now nature and biodiversity is coming up, and here I think that in general it's a struggle how to measure that and so on. I know that there are coming systems thoughts how to measure this one and so on, but I think that is probably the next big thing then together with water.
Yes, and we of course I think when it comes to sustainability, we all understand that the more information we have, the more we learn, the more we understand it, the more we have to do. And this is the good thing about it, because we become more educated, we feel more, and we feel more responsible for everything around us. And so for instance, when it comes to biodiversity, then if we speak about our quarry business, which is then actually having the biggest impact of all our business lines on specifically on the environment, because it involves actually cutting trees, and we are digging deep in the ground. But then really we are trying to compensate it as much as possible with, for instance, immediately rehabilitating the territories where we have extracted our material. So we are not just leaving these territories behind as they are, but immediately once the material is out, we rehabilitate. So it's either planting trees or let's say having ponds there. And it is interesting how, for instance, if you visit our quarries, it is interesting how lively they are. There are like birds living there, also in our cement plant, by the way. So starting with storks and different birds and animals as well. But it is actually really nice, like seeing how this extraction business can still live together with the nature. We also have several monitoring programs regarding birds and specific rare flowers in Latvia, and then we take care of those as well.
So you have a way to measure this biodiversity then?
Yes, we can still, of course, we have space for improvement when it comes to that. And we, as mentioned, we also learn by doing. We have more and more knowledge about, like what we could do. Because indeed, our goal is not just to comply. Our goal is trying to be as friendly, towards environment as possible. So it's not just, let's say, formal compliance. It's about, really trying to have as little footprint, negative footprint on nature as possible.
And this topic has turned out to be extremely important for your competitor. Back in the 90s, when I was doing corporate finance, I was involved when Heidelberg bought their business in Norway and Sweden and so on. And now I understand that they have had a lot of challenges with the main plant in Slite in Sweden, because when they will expand the quarry, it's a forest that is, from a nature perspective, very valuable forest then. So I think they only have a permit as it is now until 2026 to run that one. But now they try to get a 30-year permit in order to be upon that one. Has this affected you positively? I mean, that Swedish customers are a bit kind of doubtful what will happen with Heidelberg's ability to deliver in Sweden, or do you think
Yeah,
that this
we
will
are
be solved?
informed, let's say, about this fact itself.
I was thinking if have you seen any more demand from Swedish clients for?
But we focus really, let's say, on our effort, on our, let's say, CO2 footprint reduction and all that, and we have, let's say, our representatives in Sweden, let's say, which are dealing with sales, and we are basically just following what we are doing, and really trying to prove to the Swedish customer that we are the ones really able to deliver a product of quality and with reduced CO2 footprint.
And is this a key selling point for you in the Swedish market, that you have a good CO2 footprint of your product?
Yes. Absolutely.
So this kind of helps you directly and indirectly to drive 70% of your sales?
70% do not go only to Sweden.
Sorry, so 70% is export.
Export, exactly. So, and then let's say these approximately 70% are then almost equally divided, let's say, between or among Estonia, Finland, and Sweden, of course, with changing, let's say, percentage. But we really like diversification of markets, because indeed, let's say, if there are issues in one, then usually, let's say, not all bad things happen in all the markets. So we believe in diversification of markets.
What do you think? Is the German owner, is it happy by are they happy with the investment here in Latvia?
Well, of course, I can't speak on behalf of Schleicher family, but we deliver. We have been investing to achieve results. We truly believe in green transition, and we so far have seen opportunities that it brings, and we see the future is bright.
How do you see the market demand currently? I mean, now we have had a market with, in certain parts of the construction at least, there has been challenges or almost kind of a standstill in multifamily houses in Sweden. On the other hand, other industrial investments, infrastructure is booming at the same time. And now interest rates are starting to come down. Probably too early to see any real effects yet on the market. But how do you see how cyclical is the demand?
Yeah, well, economy is, of course, a cycle. It has always been, and there are better times and worse times. And the main thing is that we remain stable, and we are able to deliver, and that we are resilient also to, let's say, the times which are not the best. And indeed, we believe that sustainability effort is the key actually for building this resilience. But of course, the current situation is not, let's say, the economy is not booming, let's say, in the region. Of course, we feel it a lot, and
so
but we are always monitoring
signs
that.
Yet. I mean.
Yeah, well, it is not going to flourish tomorrow, but I mean, we have been through different times, and especially if we look back at, for instance, the time when full-scale invasion in Ukraine. I mean, it was so really hard even to predict, what is going to happen in a week or month or a year. So, of course, compared to that, this is. This is really, exactly. And, we are also discussing the fact that, of course, SCHWENK as a company, is, it was established back in
1845, I think, something.
Yeah,
like
47.
That. Even older than the bank, SEB, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
56.
And then, if we look back at what has happened in between, from 1847, to this day, 2 world wars and whatnot, and we are definitely not living in the worst times.
So, what do you think we can do as me working for a bank, one of the biggest bank in the region, and you're working for the only cement factory in Latvia and exporting to the region. What can we do in order to show this or help more companies, more industrial leaders to see that it is actually a good business potential in being sustainable? Because this is one of my targets in my new job now as head of sustainability in SEB.
We definitely have to be vocal about it, because if we are not, then of course nobody will see that there are these opportunities. We have to. It's almost like being a missionary in a way, that we have to, of course, show the data. We have to show the opportunities, and of course, for you as a bank, you have an absolutely great leverage these days. With taxonomy, with the green financing, sustainable financing in general. You have these wonderful opportunities because you actually have. Control over, let's say, certain types of companies, that actually depend on you, and you can change their behavior. And we, again, then in our sector, we can also show the necessity of sustainable construction and why it is necessary, how it then influences the climate, and why it is in the long run and necessary for us as a society. Just, let's say, show these benefits, why and what will happen, let's say, if we don't act. Basically, show leadership. I think this is what we can do, because nobody is too small to influence the world.
I think a key problem with the topic is that if other companies or private individuals see it as this is an extra cost for me that I can't really afford. I think this is what we all need to show as well, that it's not a cost, but it can be an investment and it can give a good return in the future. I think that
exactly. And we come back to the studies, and probably we can maybe use them in of course a friendlier way and more understandable way than they currently are, in the scientific language, which is then hard to grasp maybe for general public. But that what is an investment or a cost, as they put it today, it will be a much bigger cost tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I think currently there is a lack of understanding when it comes to this, because then we are kind of we have an opportunity to, in a way, buy time. And of course, when you just say it, then it doesn't work. But if we use the scientific data, we have to try to convince these people.
And it's not really fair to put this big cost for the generations to come. Because we cannot say that we are ignorant now, because we know that it is a cost that will come, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But there are people who refuse to believe it.
Yeah.
And we have to somehow convince them. We have to find ways how to convince them.
Hopefully some of them will listen to this podcast. I think it's has been very interesting to have this conversation. Thanks, Evita, for taking time for that one. The point is that the cement industry as such constitutes some, I think, 7% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the world. So it's a significant industry, and it's important to show leadership when you're in a tricky industry, because that inspires many others in other industries that actually have easier ways to reduce the CO2 reductions. Thank you very much for.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.